She posted a TikTok calling me her dating down phase while I was taking out her trash. I discovered it completely by accident when my coworker showed me his phone during lunch break, laughing about some viral video until he realized the guy in it was me. I watched myself carrying 2 heavy trash bags from our Nashville apartment building while Autumn filmed from our 3rd-floor window, the caption reading, "My dating down phase builds character #settling temporarily," overlaid on footage of me struggling with the weight. The video had 47,000 views and 1,200 comments that felt like reading my own obituary written by strangers. "Trial run boyfriend energy," one user wrote. "This man's literally practice for her real relationship," said another. "She's using him as a stepping stone to better respect the strategy." I scrolled through dozens more calling me a charity case, a placeholder, someone she'd obviously outgrown. What made it worse was seeing Autumn actively liking the most brutal responses, heart-reacting to comments that dissected my inadequacies with surgical precision. Her childhood friend Grace had tried defending me in the comments, writing, "He's genuinely amazing, this is cruel," but Autumn had completely ignored her while engaging with people mocking my appearance and obvious blue-collar background. I realized I'd become unwitting content for her 112,000 followers, entertainment for people who'd never met me but felt qualified to judge my worth. I went back through her recent posts with new eyes, finding a pattern I'd somehow missed, subtle digs at my modest lifestyle, jokes about my career choices, videos where she positioned herself as settling for less while building character. The betrayal felt like discovering your friends had been laughing at you behind your back for months, except these weren't friends, they were complete strangers participating in my public humiliation. I recognized usernames from our social circle, acquaintances who'd watched me at parties and apparently been discussing my relationship status in comment sections. The worst part wasn't even the mockery. It was realizing that while I'd been taking out our shared trash like any decent partner, she'd been framing that simple act of care as evidence of her charitable tolerance for someone beneath her standards. I met Autumn 18 months ago at the Bonnaroo Music Festival when my band opened for the headlining act, and she approached me backstage with the kind of confidence that made everyone else fade into background noise. I work as a software development manager for a growing tech startup downtown, pulling in solid money while doing work I actually enjoy, but Autumn owns a social media consulting firm that caters to Nashville's influencer scene and makes twice what I do. We'd been living together in her trendy Music Row apartment for 6 months, with me contributing equally to rent, utilities, and groceries despite having zero legal claim to the place since her name was the only one on the lease. Grace, who works as a pediatric speech therapist and has known Autumn since they were 7 years old, had been telling me privately for months that, "You deserve so much better than this," in a way that felt less like casual reassurance and more like genuine concern. She'd warned me about Autumn's history of using relationships for what she called social capital, though I dismissed it as childhood friend drama until now. Looking back, I could see all the signs I'd rationalized away, how Autumn rarely tagged me in posts despite documenting every other aspect of her life, how she'd avoid bringing me to industry events where her clients might see us together, how she frequently suggested I should elevate my image and consider more prestigious career paths. "You're smart enough for something bigger," she'd say while scrolling through LinkedIn profiles of marketing executives and startup founders. "Software management is fine, but imagine if you pivoted into something with real visibility." I'd thought she was encouraging my ambition, but now I understood she was embarrassed by my perfectly respectable career that didn't photograph well for her personal brand. Grace had tried telling me that Autumn's previous boyfriends followed a pattern, promising musicians who never quite made it, struggling entrepreneurs whose ventures failed, creative types she'd date until their lack of mainstream success became inconvenient for her image. "She treats relationships like stepping stones," Grace had said during one of our conversations when Autumn was traveling for work. "She finds good guys, extracts what she needs from them, then moves on when someone more advantageous comes along." I defended Autumn then, insisting Grace didn't understand our dynamic, but sitting in my car outside the office staring at that TikTok, I realized Grace had been trying to save me from exactly this humiliation. I drove straight home and packed my belongings with the same methodical efficiency I used for managing software project timelines, working through each room systematically while Autumn filmed lifestyle content in our living room just 20 feet away. I could hear her recording multiple takes of herself discussing skincare routines and productivity hacks, completely oblivious to the fact that I was dismantling our shared life in the next room. When she finally emerged from her filming session and found me loading the last of my clothes into my car, she looked genuinely confused rather than concerned. "Babe, what's going on? Are you going somewhere?" she asked, still holding her ring light in one hand. I showed her the TikTok on my phone, watching her face cycle through surprise, defensiveness, and then something that looked almost like annoyance that I'd discovered her content strategy. "Oh, that," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Babe, it's just branding. My client acquisition doubled this week because of that post. You should be happy for me." I stared at her, waiting for an apology or explanation that never came. Instead, she pulled up the comment section and started scrolling through it like she was showing me positive reviews. "Look at this engagement rate," she said excitedly. "I gained 3,000 followers in 2 days. My analytics are insane right now." I asked her to read some of the comments out loud, the ones calling me a charity case and practice boyfriend, but she refused, saying I was overreacting to strategic content creation and that I should celebrate my success instead of making it about your feelings. The conversation escalated when I pointed out that hundreds of strangers were now analyzing my inadequacies based on her carefully crafted narrative, and she became genuinely angry. "You're being way too sensitive about this," she said, her voice taking on that sharp edge I'd heard her use with difficult clients. "This is business strategy, Caleb. This is how you build an authentic personal brand in today's market." When I told her I was leaving permanently, she threatened to create a follow-up video about dealing with overly sensitive partners who can't handle successful women, and I realized she was already calculating how to monetize our breakup. I finished loading my car without another word, drove to my bandmate's converted warehouse space in East Nashville, and blocked her number before she could turn my departure into her next viral moment. That night, sleeping on an air mattress surrounded by music equipment, I felt more peaceful than I had in months of living in her perfectly curated apartment where everything existed to serve her content calendar. Within 48 hours, Autumn's strategy backfired so spectacularly that I almost felt sorry for her. I watched from the safety of my new temporary living situation as prominent lifestyle influencers created response videos calling out her toxic behavior, with #DatingDownPhase trending nationwide as an example of emotional manipulation disguised as personal branding. The backlash was swift and merciless. Her follower count plummeted by 18,000 as audiences recognized the cruelty she tried to package as humor, and I learned through mutual friends that 3 of her major clients had suspended their contracts pending reputation review. She deleted the original video within hours and posted a defensive statement claiming that some people lack the emotional intelligence for elevated content, but the damage was already done. My phone, which I'd forgotten to block her on initially, exploded with increasingly desperate texts that revealed how quickly her confidence crumbled when the internet turned against her. "Caleb, this is getting out of hand," she wrote. "Can we please talk? People are taking this way too seriously." Then, "I'm getting death threats now. This isn't fair. Finally, you know I didn't mean it the way people are interpreting it. You know me better than that." She started showing up unannounced at my workplace, forcing my coworkers to escort her out when she demanded to speak with me about clearing up misunderstandings that were apparently tanking her business. Grace called me during this chaos to tell me about the most explosive argument she and Autumn had experienced in 20 years of friendship. I told her this was sociopathic and narcissistic beyond belief, Grace said, her voice shaking with anger I'd never heard before. She actually tried to justify it by saying you should have been grateful for the exposure and that maybe this would motivate you to improve yourself. Grace had apparently ended their friendship on the spot, telling Autumn that watching her humiliate someone as decent as me had shown her who Autumn really was underneath all the carefully constructed social media personas. I changed my phone number and blocked Autumn across every platform I could think of, but she created multiple fake accounts to continue her manipulation campaign, sending messages that alternated between threats, bribes, and elaborate apologies that all somehow managed to center her own victimhood in the situation. 3 weeks after moving out, I received the most unexpected phone call of my career, A Silicon Valley startup wanted me to head their Nashville expansion as regional technical director, representing a 40% salary increase and equity options that could change my entire financial future. The timing felt like the universe compensating me for the public humiliation, and I accepted immediately despite never seriously considering leaving Nashville's music scene behind. During my celebration dinner with close friends at a downtown barbecue joint, Grace surprised me by showing up with a bottle of champagne and congratulations that felt more personal than friendly. "I'm so proud of you," she said, and something in her voice made me look at her differently than I had in all the months I'd known her as Autumn's childhood friend. After everyone else left, she lingered over dessert and finally admitted something that reframed our entire relationship. "I've had feelings for you for over a year," she said quietly, staring into her coffee cup. "Watching how you handled this situation with such integrity instead of seeking public revenge just confirmed everything I already knew about your character." I realized that while Autumn had been calculating my social media value, Grace had been observing my actual values, how I treated waitstaff, how I talked about my coworkers, how I handled stress without taking it out on others. "I kept trying to warn you about her because I could see what she was doing," Grace continued, "but also because I knew you deserved someone who recognized your worth instead of treating you like content for her personal brand." Our friendship naturally transitioned into something deeper over the following weeks, built on shared values and authentic compatibility that my relationship with Autumn had completely lacked. Grace appreciated my software career, found my band's music genuinely interesting, and never once suggested I needed to elevate my image or pursue more prestigious opportunities. She supported my decision to take the Silicon Valley position not because it would look better on her social media, but because she could see how excited I was about the technical challenges and leadership opportunities. I discovered that Grace had always recognized my genuine worth while Autumn had only seen my potential value for content creation and social media strategy, the difference between someone who loved me and someone who saw me as a demographic. Learning about my promotion through mutual connections, Autumn launched an aggressive campaign to reclaim me that felt like watching someone have a public breakdown in slow motion. She started posting gratitude content about authentic masculinity and the importance of recognizing genuine love, while privately messaging Grace with elaborate requests to mediate our reconciliation. "Tell him I've learned my lesson," she wrote to Grace in screenshots Grace showed me. "Tell him I understand now what real partnership means." She produced tearful TikToks about recognizing true love too late and the one who escaped, attracting thousands of sympathy followers who remained completely unaware of the backstory. The manufactured vulnerability was expertly crafted, soft lighting, minimal makeup, carefully chosen words that painted her as a woman who'd made mistakes but grown from them. When Autumn discovered through social media investigation that Grace and I were together, she experienced what could only be described as a complete public meltdown. She created a series of increasingly unhinged videos accusing Grace of betraying our lifelong friendship for a man and claiming I was destined to return to his soulmate once I realized Grace was just a rebound. 20 years of friendship thrown away for someone who was never even supposed to be permanent, she sobbed into her phone camera. "Grace knows Caleb belongs with me. She's just taking advantage of his vulnerable state." The manufactured drama backfired catastrophically as viewers began piecing together the timeline and recognizing Autumn's calculated manipulation tactics. Comments sections filled with people calling out her pattern of victimization and pointing out the irony of someone who'd publicly humiliated their partner now claiming true love. Her remaining corporate partnerships dissolved as brands distanced themselves from the toxicity, and her engagement rates collapsed as audiences grew exhausted by the constant manufactured controversy. Even her most loyal followers started questioning her authenticity when she posted a video claiming she'd never meant to hurt anyone, while simultaneously attacking Grace's character in the same breath. 8 months later, I'm thriving in my new role while building something genuine with Grace, who visits every few weeks and plans to relocate after completing her current patient caseload at the Children's Hospital. Autumn made one final manipulation attempt through my corporate email address, sending an elaborate message claiming she'd undergone spiritual transformation and that our connection transcends ordinary relationships, but I deleted it after reading the first paragraph of pseudo-spiritual nonsense. Through mutual friends, we learned that Autumn had rebranded herself as a relationship recovery coach, ironically building a larger following by discussing her past toxic patterns, without ever accepting genuine accountability for the specific harm she'd caused. She now creates content about healing from love addiction and recognizing authentic partnerships, monetizing her own bad behavior by positioning herself as someone who'd learned from her mistakes. The irony wasn't lost on me that she'd found a way to profit from our breakup after all, just not in the way she'd originally planned. Grace and I's relationship thrives on mutual encouragement and respect, with her supporting my career ambitions while I champion her goals of opening her own pediatric speech therapy practice. She celebrates my technical achievements without needing to broadcast them for social validation, and I love watching her work with kids who struggle to communicate, seeing the genuine passion she brings to helping families. We talk about real things, career challenges, family dynamics, books we've read, places we want to travel, instead of constantly strategizing content creation and personal branding. The experience taught me that my value was never dependent on social media metrics or someone else's willingness to showcase me, and that removing myself from toxicity created space for authentic love to flourish. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never seen that TikTok, if I'd continued living as unwitting content for someone who saw me as a stepping stone rather than a destination. But then Grace laughs at one of my terrible jokes or gets excited about a breakthrough with one of her young patients. And I'm grateful Autumn showed me exactly who she was before I wasted any more time believing I wasn't good enough for someone who never deserved me in the first place.